I'll show you guys afterwards. Okay.
This is the understanding of student athletes in their environment. My name is Kelly Kaufman.
My name is Abigail Anaya.
And my name is Bella Pasquale.
So to first start off, our question is, what type of environment positively promotes successful growth in student athletes' mental health whilst being able to maintain a strenuous schedule? So the problem at bay here is to balance a supportive environment in which can enrich a student athlete alone, to create high expectations with genuine care, so that coaches and both teachers alone can communicate effectively to create an environment in which is flexible for a student athlete, for them to not be overstressed with having to pick either their academics or their own sport alone, to create resilience within themselves through a socioeconomic.
So our potential options to establish a solution, and that solution being is a positive environment, are our first one is coaches and parents communicating. And as you can see by this graph here, the prospective family, which are families who will be involved eventually with athletics, have the same rates as current families involved with athletics, with wanting to have communication. And this communication creates trust, equitable boundaries, which are fair boundaries between all the student athletes, the coaches and parents, and it creates a stronger grasp on the issues. And some may argue that too much parent interference can lead to some sort of favoritism between that relation right there. But if we use this retaining program, you're able to prepare with your work focuses, what the parent focuses, and also what the working parent focuses, which is the whole entire collaborative focus. So our second option to build our positive environment is by implementing mental health programs specific to student athletes. And here are some programs that are currently in use, which is the Bucknell University Student Athlete Enrichment Program, which is on a college. And then you have Movember, Mind Moves, Athletes for Hope. And in this graph here, it's kind of blurry, but it's asking from NCAA, it asks collegiate athletes how they feel about the prominence of programs implemented on their college, and a lot of them said they know where to go, but they wouldn't feel comfortable with speaking to them. So if we let these programs come to them, and instead of them having to go to them, it creates mental health knowledge, emotional regulation, and behavioral improvement. And the stigma around these programs that are at hand, that have been placed by traditions, will be broken because student athletes will now be able to publicly speak without having to be put down. So our last one is mental health literacy. And as you can see through this graph here, student athletes' mental health tends to fall because of academic worries, parent pressure, and planning for the future, and there's many more. And research shown by Penn State counseling utilization through student athletes versus non-athletes shows that by using these programs, it allows students to actively talk about depression, generalized anxiety, social anxiety, academic stress, eating concerns, hostility, and alcohol use. And you can see that student athletes tend to have more success with talking about it than non-athletes. And mental health literacy may seem like, oh, well, if they're too aware of their emotions, they're not going to go seek to these programs. But mental health literacy isn't just about understanding yourself. It improves your mental well-being, but it's also better self-care and understanding symptoms before it's too late to act on those. And there are some limitations, but Abby will go into more depth on that.
Okay, so as far as limitations goes, as you can see here, literacy and mental health literacy isn't the end-all be-all for creating and supporting mental health within student athletes. So in a study done, it actually kind of disproves that point. However, so looking here, it's by nature.com. A study was done on mental health literacy, and this graph is based on articles that were published, books that were published, research studies that were done, and they show the axis, and in between these years, it's a pretty stagnant growth, but then around 2017 to 2023, you can see that there's an exponential growth in literacy and overall people wanting to be able to understand mental health. However, this also goes hand in hand with the United States anxiety prevalence. So a study was done by the CDC, the National Survey on Drug Use in Health. And as you can see here, in the time between that 2017 to 2023 time period, you can see that anxiety rates actually spike. So as you can see right here, that shows that maybe creating a supportive environment and a knowledgeable environment may not be the solution. However, when we look at a study done by the CDC, you can see that while literacy and the anxiety or mental health illness rates do go up, so do people reaching out for help. So as you can see, the increase of recognized and reporting mental illness shows that education does foster people reaching out for help. So therefore, while people do reach out for help, that means that they know that they are suffering or they know other people who are suffering and they're able to get themselves help. So people feel represented and understood, they're more likely to get help. So some foundations that do promote these ideas are the Athletes for Hope Foundation, National Alliance on Mental Health or Mental Illness, and Active Minds on the Suicide Prevention Center. And so overall, in like a neurological lens, you can see that humans thrive in familiar and similar environments. So when people have communities that foster and also just talk about mental health in general, they're going to feel more comfortable and more supported in talking about their mental health and their mental struggles. So this goes extremely well for student athletes because they're often teenagers and young adults, and they experience nuanced emotions and nuanced experiences. So therefore, by creating mental health literacy, while in certain ways people might recognize their mental illness more, they're more inclined to get help and help support mental health in student athletes the most.
So in conclusion, the final statement is to create an overall positive environment that student athletes can feel accepted in and overall talk to other professionals or coaches, parents, other mental health facilities to get help for anything that they need. As this person shows, balancing practice, work, friendships, relationships, all of that together and cumulative is a very hard and challenging aspect to do. But being able to be in an environment that is enriched and helps grow their own resilience can not only help the student athlete themselves, the collegiate athlete, but also the environment in totality. Thank you.
Bella, if you had another team member, what other perspectives or limitations could they have researched that would have added to your?
I think they could have researched like the overall outcomes of being a student athlete and the mental effects it has on like the future point of it, like when they go into adulthood, because it would really emphasize how important this issue is and how it's not just prominent in these young years in student athletes, but also in future years, and how it carries on and how it can ruin people's lives sometimes because they're so driven by this anxiety and stress around life that the minute they are able to calm down, they don't know what to do. And I think that's a very strong perspective that could be used to really just emphasize the issue. Yes.
Abby, describe an argument from one of your peers' individual reports that made you think differently about your team's solution or conclusion.
So I think going into it, a lot of our perspective initially going into it was that you need to create more programs that do support mental health in student athletes. However, that honestly really wasn't the case. As you can see, mental health literacy and promoting education was probably the biggest component in getting people help, because truthfully, getting help isn't the issue, and having foundations that support mental health for student athletes and young adults isn't really the problem. It's more of getting people to be driven to that, to those foundations and be able to recognize within themselves certain symptoms.
And Kelly, what is an example of an argument from one of your teammates' individual reports that you decided to exclude or not include from your team's presentation, and why?
So I excluded one of the NCAA reports in which showcased that 50% of collegiate athletes do not believe that mental health is an actual issue within the athletics department. It does showcase that it is 50% less than what the 100% initial mass is, but it is a statement that I feel like didn't have that much credibility for our own statement.
Excellent. Great job, ladies.
It's like never happened.
All right, great job, both groups.